Welcome along to the Make It Count podcast. My name is David,
My name's Matt.
and we are the Taylor Bros.
Yes,
And
we are.
yeah, we've got this intro down now, haven't we? Yeah, we nailed it every time. Boom. Uh, anyway, recently I read a book, and this episode
No,
is
you
going to be
didn't.
all about this book, and it's called Humour Seriously. For those of you who are catching this on YouTube, this is the book. It's by Jennifer Aker and Naomi Bagdonas. And the subtitle is Why Humor is a Superpower at Work and in Life. And the second subtitle, asterisk, is And How Anyone Can Harness It, Even You. So, it's
There
a,
you
a
go. There's
long
hope even
titled,
for us.
yeah, a long titled book. It feels quite pressured in a sense because, you're trying to be funny. You realize from reading the book, like, oh, humor is really important. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit. Be like, okay, I should try to be funny. So hopefully that's not what today's episode is.
I'm sure they probably talked to that in the book, and they say that's maybe counterintuitive.
Yeah, and
We've all been there. We've all been there
I
when
did
someone's
sympathize with,
trying to be funny.
well, indeed.
It's yeah,
I did sympathize with the authors a little bit because obviously they're PhDs, so they've got all this research. They've done, like, one of them's done stand-up comedy and all of that. And so you write this book about humor, and there's just this, you could see this pressure to be funny and use some of the tips and tools that they've done, and they've done pretty well. Not every joke lands for me anyway. But yeah, I think that adds a little layer to it. It's a bit meta, when someone's teaching you about storytelling and they're telling stories, and it's like, are these actually good stories? Or a communication teacher, and they have to be really good at communication. They won't just teach you about it. And it's that sort of, oh, you're teaching us to be funny, but are you funny?
yeah, true. So you've read the book. I haven't read the book, but I did listen to an interview with the two authors.
Mm.
So you've told us a little bit about the authors. I think that's fine. What is kind of, as far as you could pull out, the main message of the book? I mean, the title kind of says it, but what's your summary?
The thing underneath humor is it's about human connection, and specifically in the workplace, about how we get this idea in our head about being professional and being serious people. And actually, we don't necessarily need more professionalism and more seriousness. We need more human connection.
Yeah,
And so a great vessel for that is humor. It builds connection, it builds relationship, it helps us notice that other people are humans as well. And we've all had those emails that land in our inbox, and we're a bit like, is this a real person or is this a robot? And I saw something on Twitter the other day, and someone had just taken a screenshot, and they said, my dad sends text messages like it and sounds like a phishing, also a scam. Basically, he sounds like a scam because
right.
it's just this language, and it's like, yeah, put a bit of humanity into our, even to
Sure.
our digital communications. And so, yeah, summary of it, humor is about human connection. How can we bring that more human connection into both work and life?
I think that's really interesting. And from the interview, it was fascinating because, of course, one of the authors kind of said, in a sense, humor was not a big part of her life and just wasn't part of her family culture at all. And the other one, the one that went into doing stand-up comedy, she actually says she realized when they actually started researching on this and coming to this together, she'd wasted so many years because she had got into the corporate world, and whilst on the weekends she was doing stand-up comedy, in her corporate life she was going, oh, if I'm going to get ahead here, I need to put on this face of serious and busy and formal and not show any humor, until someone basically, I think she was in some sort of consultancy, a client literally said, you know, I've never seen you smile. I worry that you're just like this really, you on the weekends, you're this crazy cat lady who has no life and has no friends. And that couldn't be the furthest from the truth. And so she realized that all the things that she enjoyed outside of her corporate life that made her successful in her social life, they actually could be the same as, you know, it was the humorous way that she could approach life. It could also do the same in work, and obviously appropriately. And they were talking about this. They were saying, when it comes to the work context, really the bar isn't actually high. It really is just don't make inappropriate jokes. That's it.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be good jokes. It doesn't even have to be necessarily ace humor, you know, that you're sniping people, that you're doing this, you know, you're cracking the best joke people. It's literally just bringing a sense of levity that doesn't stand out and make things awkward or inappropriate.
So Matt, I have a question for you. Did you smile or laugh yesterday?
I did.
Oh, that's very good. And that is the question that Gallup
Did you?
polls used across 1.4 million people and like over 100 different countries. And they did it with all these people, and they found that basically we hit a humor cliff. At about age 23, when we enter the workforce, most people answer no to that question.
More often than not. Yeah.
More
Did
often
you
than not.
smile or laugh yesterday, David?
Of course. We recorded a
What was it
podcast
at?
yesterday, peel behind the. But
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I laughed the most when we record our weekly podcasts.
yeah, so it's never more than 1 week away from a laugh, Matt. That's great.
There you go.
But and many of us have heard those numbers of, you know, an average 4 or 5-year-old laughs like 300 times a day, and most adults after 23 don't do that in a year, or something approximating
I think it
that.
was yeah, I think they said it was 400 for a toddler, and it takes a few months for a 40-year-old to get that.
Yeah,
So
and so their theory is, as soon as we enter the workforce, we believe that it's serious business, and in order to be taken seriously, we must be serious.
yeah,
And that they counteract that with saying that 98% of people report that they prefer to work with people who have a sense of humor.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
it's like, oh, we think we have to be serious, but actually people prefer people with a sense of humor. And not only that, if you have a sense of humor or perceived to have a sense of humor, people attribute a higher sense of status to you. So
yeah,
people that are funnier or we perceive are funny, they actually are perceived as higher in status. So that is good, like, you know, to have that. And so ultimately we sort of in our minds put the gravity of serious work as an opposition to levity. And actually that word you used, appropriateness, becomes really important. And
absolutely.
they talked
And I
about.
think the other thing as well, it's not just about people perceive you as higher status, because I mean,
Mm,
people might not be like, well, I don't want to appear higher status, but people attribute to those that are seen as humorous, not necessarily funny, but humorous,
mm,
greater creativity, greater intelligence, actually perceived as more attractive.
mm,
How interesting is that? And I think there is actually, if you think about it, just whatever your attraction template is, a smiling face is more attractive than a blank or a frowning face. And
mhm.
so I think that there is an element of, by being humorous, you are more attractive because you smile, and
Mhm.
smiling is attractive.
Yeah. Well, and that's why the question was yesterday, did you smile or laugh? It wasn't, you know, necessarily, did you have a full belly laugh or whatever? Although that's interesting to think about, when was the last time you had one of those experiences?
Yeah.
But one of the things I think we all fear when it comes to being funny is that silence.
Yeah, it
You
doesn't
know,
land, or it's an off joke and you've actually just hurt someone's feelings or something.
yeah, and but you know, and I suppose um stand-up comedians talk about that moment where you say something to a group and like, you know, nobody laughs, they don't find it funny. And they did this mock interview, I think, and it was some of them, they said say this joke, others of them, you know, play it straight. And I can't remember the joke. It probably wasn't that funny. I think the punchline was, you know, something about Switzerland, three great things, and the last one was, and the flag's a big plus, or something like that. You know, bit silly.
It's a great
Anyway,
World Cup joke, that.
yeah.
Yeah.
but they said whether the other person laughed or not was not the most helpful thing, right? It was whether it was appropriate or not, as you said, appropriateness of the humor. So we think if we get a laugh, it's successful, and if we don't,
Sure.
it's unsuccessful. But they actually said it's a little bit more, it's a little bit different. It's a little classic matrix. You can, if it's appropriate and gets a laugh, big win. If it's appropriate and doesn't get a laugh, still a win. If it's inappropriate and gets a laugh, actually that's not a win. That's a negative. And
Yeah.
obviously, if it's inappropriate and doesn't get a laugh, that's a big fail. And so
Yeah.
sometimes if we just take it on the feedback of did the room laugh, we end up with a bit of a miss thing. But actually, it's about whether it's appropriate, and that's obviously a difficult thing because what is appropriate at the dining room table at home might necessarily be different than what's appropriate at work, might be slightly different than what's appropriate with your friends, and so navigating that can be a little bit difficult. And they touch up on that at the end. It's like, what happens when you make a humor fail, when it goes wrong? And ultimately it's own it, take responsibility, apologize, refresh,
Move on. Yeah.
move on basically.
I really like that. And a slight tangent, it reminds me of a great TED talk I watched by, I think it's Michael Jr. We'll find a link and put it in the show notes. He's a comedian. I think he's really funny. And he talks about this journey where earlier on in just in life and in his career, he thought it was about like making people laugh, right? Or like getting laughs. But then what he realized, like he had this transformative moment and it transformed his thinking slightly from instead of I'm trying to get laughs from the audiences, I'm trying to give joy. And that was just in a sense, you might go, semantics, but actually it's a massive difference because you think about that, you go, if my only barometer is like, did they laugh, right? I'm going to keep pushing that envelope until I get a laugh. And sometimes, you get a laugh from people just because you've shocked them, not because it's actually funny and not because it's actually appropriate. And so
Mm,
I think that's helpful again to just go, yeah, you might get a laugh from the room if that's your aim is to get laughs and to be perceived as the funny one. But actually, you might be making big missteps and maybe alienating someone or whatever. So again, this whole thing, and I think the authors bang that drum again, it's not about just trying to get laughs. It's about bringing a levity to life and seeing the truth, the funniness in the truth. And that's sort of, they talk about contrast. They talk about the rule of three, which is this classic, you kind of start a list and then the third one, or it might be the fourth or fifth, is just slightly out of there and you're like, people are not expecting it, but interesting, and that makes something funny.
yeah. I mean, tangent to your tangent, to tangentially
So we're like
tangential.
back on track again.
No, different way. But
Okay.
these two are both lecturers and PhDs at Stanford, and they have a course that's accredited for on humor seriously, but it's not the only thing they do. And I think what one or both of them also do a course on meaning and happiness, but how they're slightly different. And when they talk to people who say their main goal is happiness, they found that that generally becomes more, or has shown itself to be more self-focused, whereas people that are looking for meaning tends to be more other-focused, and how that might change in our lives and things like that. And what brings us happiness is different. And I suppose, how does that tie into this? Well, they talk about kind of this idea of like a pyramid, that they're quaint to some sporting examples. So they said at the bottom of the pyramid is levity. Are you looking for moments of levity? It's actually, you don't have to be the funniest person in the room, but if someone makes a joke, are you willing to laugh with it? Are you ready to laugh
Yeah.
at it? When something amusing happens, do you see it? Are you quick with a smile? And that idea of like positioning yourself for levity and humor, because the next one up is humor. It is that, can I be a bit funny? And then the top of the pyramid they talk about was comedy. It's the professional comedian or TV show that they're paid to do that. And actually, in order to have humor or to be funny, it's not about being a comedian. And I think, we've met people that think they are and they're not. And most of us are not professional comedians. And it's,
Thank goodness, because can you imagine the state of the economy if most people were commercial comedians? That would be, I'm not sure how that
just
would work.
consistent entertainment all round.
You can't fill up on humor all the time. You do have to eat.
Yeah, but basically they talk about how levity is a mindset. It's a receptiveness to joy. And how when we switch that on, immediately we start seeing the moments in our lives that do this. And so one of the things they do in their course is the first lecture they have with their new students is they do a humor audit. And they said, this next week, write down, like capture every time you smile or laugh. And they talked about a student that did it, and they said, Tuesday, I didn't laugh or smile at all. Who knew that a course on humor could be so depressing? But actually, in, in starting to measure it, by the end of the course, it's that classic priming thing. You bring your attention to it, you start noticing these things. And that, I think, I'm not sure if it's in this book, but that classic joke about, if aliens came to this planet, they would think that dogs are the bosses because we walk around behind them picking up their poo. Who's the real king in this situation?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just, he's noticed in this world this slightly absurd thing and just highlighted it and just pointed fun at this sort of amusing situation.
Yeah.
And they happen around us all the time. But if we're not in that mindset of seeing something that's amusing or ready to sort of notice the contrasts around us, we miss out on those moments of levity.
I really like that phrase you used earlier about being kind of the reception, or how receptive are you to joy?
Mm.
And again, it's that eyes wide open thing of like, what are you looking for? Because in a sense, what you look for, you'll find it. And we've spoken about this before, but the whole sort of optimistic people, or the people that are that that think they're more lucky, are more likely in the scientific study to notice the $100 bill on the floor that's been placed in their path than
Mm-hmm.
those that are feel themselves as pessimistic or realistic, And so again, there's so much going on every day, and it's a bit like the homework for life with Matthew Dix. Are you, in a sense, am I creating habits in my life? His one was basically at the end of every day, just write down what was maybe one or two story moments from that
Mm-hmm.
day. And in a sense, this is exactly the same. It's just, are you looking for what's the humorous aspect to it? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that can make for a great story, but he's opening it and saying it doesn't have to be funny. It could be meaningful. It could be sad. It could be poignant. But yeah, this is, am I training my eyes to just go, yeah, no, the world is full of funnies, and we've talked about quite a few things maybe in recent episodes about just some of the sad things, the hard things, that life is difficult. And obviously part of the purpose behind this podcast is, we live in a noisy world, we live in a distracted world, we live in a crazy busy world, but how can we live with purpose? That can maybe feel heavy. Well, part of, I think, these guys, the whole premise behind their book, and actually not just the premise, but the findings from their research. And this isn't just them going away and sitting in a room. This is them literally going out and interviewing people. And I don't actually know what other methodologies they've used. Maybe you do. But they've found the real world benefits of humor in
Mm-hmm.
people's lives that have meaningful
So
outcomes.
definitely. So they, and they do a whole long chapter on your brain on humor, where they
Yeah.
basically collate all of the research, tell the story of how that research came about. And so much of it is things like when they got two people that were total strangers to laugh with each other before they talked, like they felt 37% more connected to them.
Yeah.
And when they watched a video that was, so it's the classic, what was the classic psychology test where, can you get a candle to go on the wall? And have you seen that one where they give them a box of like tacks and they
On the
have to
wall.
see if,
No.
oh, it's this classic psychology test. And basically the reason it goes wrong is people see this box of tacks and see it as a box rather than a potential tray that they can use as an attachment to it. And so we don't notice that this actually could function as another thing. And
Sure.
so the add-on test they did to that was they they showed them a funny video beforehand, and that unlocked creativity, so they were more likely to solve this puzzle.
Right.
And so it's just, yeah, actually there was some highlights here. The brain on funny, it people perceive you as more powerful and more intelligent. Um, it builds bonds, social bonds, so you quicken the path to trust. you are more creative. So seeing the connections that you previously missed, i.e., in this study, and also the last one that was really interesting was resilience. It immediately reduces stress. So in the moment, it reduces stress, but also we bounce back more quickly when we can see the levity, when we can find the humor in that situation. I didn't
Wow.
I don't know if I told this on the podcast before, but it was quite funny. I've already started the story wrong, but basically, I was in the office the other day, um, and I looked up at the clock and I was realized I had to go somewhere soon. I had to, um, and so I quickly sent off a few emails and then started to pack everything up. Now I had quite a lot of stuff to pack up, so I put my rucksack on my back. I had two other bags that I had to throw over my shoulder. I had like a wheeling suitcase with a load of tech in it, plus my laptop went under my one arm. Plus, I was carrying like another folder as well. So I'm walking out. Someone else had to open the doors. I'm getting up the stairs and then open the other door as I get up the stairs. I wheel out, get to the car, load up the car, sit down, look at the clock, and it says 1:30, which is a problem because I didn't need to leave till 2:30. So I was like, oh well, maybe the car clock is wrong. I don't remember changing it. The clock changed relatively recently. So I get my phone out, look at the clock. Huh, that also says 1:30. I was like, oh no, maybe my phone is wrong as well. So I like Googled, what time is it in the UK at the moment?
Brilliant.
And it was 1:30, and I just sat there for about a minute going, I've just left like an hour early. What do I do? It's quite funny, but entirely embarrassing that I still don't know how to read a clock.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So what did you do? So basically, in your mind, you're going, do I go back with all of the stuff and make that same journey again? Or like hang my head and go, oh, I can't read a clock? Or do you just sort of, what did you do?
no, I was like, do I go and just sit in a car park somewhere for an hour and wait until, I'm actually can start? Or do I go back in? So I went to the boot, I picked up my laptop and I went, we're gonna laugh at this, and I'm gonna laugh, and it's gonna make it easier than like shamefully going in. So as I was walking past, and you walk past the windows before you even get into the office, so everyone could see me coming back. And I walked in and I said, well, looks like I'm still learning how to read a clock.
Brilliant.
And it's not
They're probably all
especially,
thinking, oh, he's forgotten something.
yeah, it's not especially funny. And probably nobody else noticed. And, we've all done something that's a bit embarrassing. But I just owned it and laughed and sat down and it was fun.
There you go. Well, speaking about the clock, looks like it's about the time to wrap this episode up.
Yeah, I suppose before we wrap it up, I just wanted to say there were two things that they said: the anatomy of funny, which they tell a line. I can't remember who they quoted, but it's like, "Sorry, I'm late. I didn't want to come," which is quite funny. And
That's brilliant.
and
I'm so going to use that.
and they said basically, one, at the heart of humor is truth. We know that's funny because lots of people will have thought that and never said it. And two, all humor and contains surprise and misdirection. And that sentence captures both. It's true, but also surprising. And you didn't expect. You've heard, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm late. I got held up in traffic," or excuse. But you just owned it. I was late. I didn't want to come.
That's great. I like that. That's really brilliant.
So when we're noticing these moments of levity, notice what is true first, and how can you make that into a misdirection or a bit of a surprise? Can you exaggerate it a little bit or create a contrast? Can we use those sorts of things? Because ultimately we all get on well better when we laugh with one another, when we're building those relationships. And like it said, it quickens the path to trust, and I'm all on that trust train at the moment. And so at work and in life, it's valuable and useful. So I encourage us all to go on a quest of looking for levity. And I'm almost like wondering whether I actually take a week to do my humor audit.
Okay, don't be on the fence about it. Are you going to do the homework?
Well, I am on the fence about it because I don't know if I want to commit to it.
Hey, I've committed to stuff on this podcast before and had
Yeah,
to play some music.
yeah, but we don't
How about we
always.
do it together? We do it together. We'll do a funny audit this week,
Okay.
or at least until the next time we record a podcast.
Yeah, all right then. Okay.
Excellent. You guys are welcome to join on the funny homework or something that is the find the fun audit. Is there a link to the questions to ask? Is there, or should we just put that in the show notes? These are the questions you ask, or just
What?
was it just a simple like, did you smile and laugh?
I
Is
think
that
it's
it? How many
literally like an
times?
audit. It's like tracking over the course of a week how many times you smile and laugh.
Okay, so basically the end of each day, or maybe depending on how much you're laughing and smiling, every hour, record how many times you smiled and laughed, and at the end of the week, you'll know how much joy there is in your life.
Well, that's what I was
Statistically.
wondering whether I had to track it as I went.
Mm, mm. I think you can easily set up like something on an Evernote or something, which is just like a tally thing, like, laughs, smiles, just add one. Or, yeah, I mean, like, do a little, what's it called?
Yeah.
Tally chart, the old 1, 2, 3, 4 cross. Just do them, piece of paper.
There
Easy.
you are.
Pen and
So
paper. Come on, guys.
go read the book. I would recommend it. It's a good book. It's got good research. So it's not just two people saying, "Ha, funny is funny." Ha ha ha. It's it's well researched, it's well evidenced. It's a
Yeah.
Stanford course, so they've got videos that supplement it, and it's fully accredited as well. It's not just like
Yeah.
an extra. It gets the same as if you did like a financial something or other.
A
So
financial something or other. Yeah,
yeah,
there you go. You heard it here first. You can get courses in something that's similar to finance. There's a
exactly.
chance actually that they even have some online stuff with that, because we've done a stuff before with the guys also from Stanford, the Design Your Life guys, and they actually had a course that was, you could purchase it for very cheap actually online. So anyway, we'll go and have a look and see if it's there. If it is, put a link in the show notes.
Yeah. So
Again, we
in the
are not
meantime,
affiliated. We just
look for
like this stuff.
levity. Yeah, look for levity. And thank you for joining us this week on the Make It Count podcast.